Welcome to the System Simplified podcast, where we feature top leaders who share stories on how to successfully systemize a business. Now, let's get started with the show.
Hello, Adi Klevit here, the host of the System Simplified podcast, where we feature top founders, entrepreneurs, and thought leaders about systematizing a business. And today's episode is being brought to you by Business Success Consulting Group, where we create, document, optimize, and implement processes and procedures so businesses can grow and thrive. And today's guest is Benjamin Moróne. Hi, Benjamin.
Hey, Adi, how's it going?
Going well. I'm so excited to have you on the podcast. We're going to have a very interesting conversation about hiring, which is, we can never have enough conversations about the process of hiring and hiring correctly, which is very important.
Awesome. Thanks so much for having me.
You're very welcome. Okay, so let me introduce you. So, Benjamin, you are an entrepreneur, innovator, and founder of Zabota, a company that helps recruit the perfect individual for your day-to-day operations. And you are based in Warsaw, Poland, and you basically service clients, hundreds of clients all over the globe.
Correct. Yeah. So I run a recruitment firm called Zabota, primarily staffing from Central and Eastern Europe, where I'm located, and then also Latin America, South and Latin America, mainly for US-based businesses, Canadian-based, UK, have some clients in Dubai, and now just kind of expanding all over. The nice thing about being here and servicing the US is I have the beginning of my day, right, where there's not a bunch of clients, but now I'm getting them in Bali and Dubai where they're ahead of me. Now it's like I'm working around the clock. But it's awesome being able to serve clients across the globe.
Absolutely. So, the workforce where it becomes global, what are some of the challenges that you see with working with a global workforce?
The number one is communication. I think that's with any workforce, even if you're in office, if the person's right in your town and sitting at a desk near you or a cubicle near you, communication is always going to be that number one challenge. So making sure that people have solid internet, backup internet, solid hotspots, that's really key because things happen. Sometimes there's tropical storms, as you may know, and Wi-Fi may go down. And so making sure that someone can stay connected to apps like Slack or Teams or Zoom or Google Meet is very important. So the number one challenge, I think, is communication. You just need to have some fail-safes in place to protect that communication and connectivity.
Absolutely. Do you find that differences in culture also is a challenge? Understanding culture or understanding business, the business world, maybe somebody in Poland doesn't necessarily understand a business in the United States?
Sometimes it really depends on the type of business sometimes. So if it's something that is heavily online, maybe it's cutting edge with some AI, maybe it's something that is only focused in the US, there can be a little bit of a culture gap there. In general, Poland and some of these regions that we're hiring from are very US focused. They like the culture. They obviously see like all the movies, those types of things. So they're pretty in tune with American like internet culture and pop culture. But sometimes in the business world, there can be a little bit of a gap, especially if it's something that's cutting edge and right on the forefront. Maybe it's something that's coming out of a tech valley in San Francisco. But those things can be learned.
Yeah, so how do you overcome those challenges?
A big part of it is the pre-work that you do with some of the recruiting or the onboarding. Let's say you find your final candidate. You're like, hey, there might be a little bit of a knowledge gap here, or there might be a little bit of a culture gap. Building a playbook or a systemized onboarding for them where you can help identify, what are these gaps that they have, and then start to fill those in with information. That process is also really good for you, the business owner, especially if it's a smaller business, because it forces you to get what's up here in your mind out onto paper or out into, let's say, Google Docs or Notion or whatever kind of system you use, and really solidify that knowledge.
Absolutely. And, this is what we do is we create and document processes. And I cannot agree with you more, because that is what I think saved a lot of our clients in terms of in onboarding new employees fast. Like one of our clients said that it basically decreased the onboarding time by 75%. He was able to actually quantify that. But you are right, because if we actually have things documented, very clearly written and the expectations are there, then there is no problem in the onboarding, right? It really overcome that obstacle. So absolutely. Now, we looked at the challenges. So from your perspective, what are the benefits of working with a global workforce?
So depending on where your business is located and where some of the clients are located, it allows you to almost get done as much as you would in one day, but like double the time. So you have the ability to work asynchronously with different teams across the globe. For example, you have a dev team in, let's say, the Philippines, or you have it in Poland. They're many hours ahead of you before you wake up inside of the United States. So they're able to kind of do some pre-work, complete projects, and then the US team's able to take over and continue working on those projects. That's
Right.
if it's based asynchronously. If they're working on your time zone, it's just a good collaborative type of network. But I like when we're working on different dev projects to have it basically like almost like where you're running a race or a relay where you hand the baton over to the next team that's waking up during the day.
That's right. So you can have that. Do you also find that they bring like different perspectives or different education that actually helps in terms of giving that all-rounded viewpoint?
Yeah. So of course, with the economic factor, I mean, if you're a smaller business and you're struggling to attract talent, or maybe you just can't compensate talent in your local area in the States, you can find someone overseas in Europe and in the Philippines and in Latin America who maybe they work for a larger company. Maybe they work for a company that's kind of in your niche 4 or 5 times size bigger than you. They can bring in knowledge, different perspectives, different like systems and operating techniques into your business to give it some fuel. And I'm not talking about like IP or anything that would be contractually, an issue, but I'm talking about ways they think and ways they've been trained. And you just wouldn't have access to that level of talent inside of the States unless you're paying very, very large money for it. And it may be out of the realm for small business owners, but by going overseas and looking globally, they have the opportunity to bring in new perspectives and new knowledge and some of the stuff that you've mentioned.
Absolutely. I agree. What are some of the best practices when hiring not a local talent, but a global talent? Like what do you recommend for your clients to look for when they're interviewing somebody? That it will have to be over the internet, right? It will have to be remotely, which is fine. I mean, the majority of us are also doing it now. I mean, this is the way you do it, in terms of driving an hour and a half for an interview, you will do it over Zoom. But what are your recommendations? What are best practices in terms of interviewing candidates?
As far as the interviewing process and the recruitment process, I really think making sure you have the pre-work done and a solid plan before you set out on the journey of contacting candidates and interacting with them and representing your brand and your company is you need to have that solid pre-work done. So think about not only like the job description, but what are they judged on? What are these KPIs? How are they affecting the overall goals quarterly, yearly? How are they actually affecting the company? So why are you hiring for this role? It allows you to paint a better picture when you're communicating with someone and selling them on the role, right? So these people across the globe, they get hit up with a lot of different job offers, and some of them may be really solid, some may not be that great. And so you need to appeal to them and say, hey, this is why you should come work at my company. There's a million other agencies or small business owners who want to work with these types of candidates or want their expertise locally and internationally. So you need to have a solid kind of mission, vision, and have done that pre-work to give them a place to grow inside of your company. So a lot of the stuff for interviewing and recruitment starts even before you start talking to people in the interview process. In the interview process, you can break it up with quick screening interviews and then more technical or case study based interviews. I like to throw case studies in the recruitment process just because it shows you how someone thinks. So if you kind of just spring a case study on someone, it's a little bit of surprise, yes, but you get to see how does this person think in an environment where there's a little bit of pressure, but it's not something that's totally overwhelming. And you just see how they make those decisions.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's very true. How long do you think, from your experience, does it take to see if a person is a good fit or not good fit for your company?
So it really depends on the onboarding process. If there's a bulletproof onboarding process and it's very solid and the person can understand what's going on from the first couple of weeks, I think under a month you can tell if they're a good fit. Depends also on the role, maybe some more technical roles, senior roles. it's very hard to justify if the person's made a significant impact on the company, sometimes within a month, especially if it's more senior and it's like they're judged on quarterly scenarios or quarterly timelines. But typically within a month is a fair judgment.
Okay, good to know. I agree. What are some of the evaluative questions or the questions that you use in order to evaluate if the candidate, or that you recommend your clients, I mean, the people that are hiring, what are some of those questions that you recommend using in order to evaluate if it's actually a good fit or not?
Yeah, so one of my favorites is if there were 3 companies offering the exact same role, the exact same compensation, why would you choose this role to work with us? And it lets you know, why does this person actually want to work for your company? Is it just, oh, monetarily it's attractive? Well, there's 3 other companies, offering the same exact position, so it can't be that answer. So it allows you to see why they actually want to join your team, if they actually find your business interesting, if they're actually curious about your business. Because if they find it interesting and they're actually curious about your business, they're going to stay long term. They're not just going to job hop in a year and leave you for the next best opportunity. And so that's one of my favorite questions to ask. We have a big list of questions that we use like internally and suggest to our clients. But that's one of my favorite ones because it kind of cuts through all the noise and then just gets an answer out of the candidate of like, why us, why working for our company, without asking it in the canned way of like, why'd you apply to this job, or what makes us different, or those types of things.
Right, but what would you use, like, let's say after 30, 60, 90 days, what would you use in order to evaluate the candidate? Like, what would be some of the specific questions or specific things you're going to look at?
30, 60, 90 days, like after, typically we're just looking at different KPIs, and it depends on the role. So let's say we're bringing someone on the sales side, we're looking at them in a benchmark or comparing them to some of the other people who've been there, and looking at, okay, are they in the middle? Are they in the average? Do they need to be improved? Like what's going on with that? And so typically it's a conversation that's held internally within our clients.
Yeah, so when you get somebody who is like a salesperson, so the KPIs are pretty obvious, right? I mean, are they selling, not selling? Are they actually creating the leads or not creating the leads? And it takes time as well. What do you do for roles that are a little bit less obvious? Let's say an executive assistant that's supposed to create schedules and create, email management, etc. What do you do there?
So a big thing with the executive assistants is some of the speed to response. With executive assistants, it's pretty easy to tell if they're performing well based on how attentive they are. So if you're sending them a message in Slack, or you're sending them a text, or whatever kind of medium of communication you use, and they're not responding within an hour, and it's taking them 2-3 hours, and you're just texting them, and it's just like, are you at your computer? Are you available? Or are you working? Then that's not going to be a solid fit. Also around mistakes, right? So there's kind of almost like a 3-strike rule within that first 90 days with executive assistants. You wouldn't want to give them like the most complex task up front. You kind of want to grandfather them in and ramp them up with different tasks, and also with the level of like security. Let's say they mess up a flight thing, or they mess up some sort of client interaction. Those are pretty serious things. And that would be pretty negative when you're evaluating them. If maybe they mess up like an email, there's like a typo or something small, or maybe there's a strange bit of like English because English isn't their first language, but those types of things can be fixed. But if it's something where they mess up like a flight or a financial transaction or something very serious with a client, hopefully you'd have SOPs in place that would make it super, super clear. So it's like, look, you're not following the standard operating procedures. Why wasn't this followed? And then that'd be a conversation that you'd have with them. And I know you know everything about standard operating procedures and systems, and that stuff's very, very important when you're dropping someone into a business.
Absolutely. Yes, it is very important for sure. And that's why you have to have your SOPs documented, so then you can have metrics and measurements against it to see if it is actually working or not working, right? Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Okay, good. Well, Benjamin, if people want to learn more about you, about your services, contact you, how can they contact you?
Yeah, so for the business, it's zabota.io, so zabota.io. For me personally, we're on YouTube. We have 100+ videos on hiring and recruitment and the interview process. Benjamin Moróne or Zabota Staffing on YouTube. And then also X or Twitter as well, which is just my name, Benjamin Moróne, Morone.
Awesome. Okay, well, I definitely encourage our listeners to check those out so they can learn more about what you do. And that has been a very good conversation about hiring and best practices. So thank you so much for being a guest.
Hey, thank you so much. Thanks for the opportunity.
Thanks for listening to the System Simplified podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.